Okay, take a look at our sails when we're trimmed for lift, properly trimmed. The windward telltales are pulling straight aft horizontal, and the leeward telltales are pulling straight aft horizontal. The telltales on the back of the main are pulling straight back, and there's very little left in the front edge of the main. So the main's pretty well trimmed, so we're all set. This is the third of our video in the sail trim series, and we'll focus on upwind sail trim. In the preceding video on offwind sailing, we drafted up a sail trim guide. Let's extend that sail trim guide by marking off the upwind areas of sailing. And if we reference back to the wind power graph, we can see that those areas of upwind sailing we need to trim for lift. We know from video 1 that lift is the product of a smooth flow of air by both sides of a curved surface. So let's see how lift works in practice. If you have a sailboat with a jib, and the jib has a smooth flow of air past it, it will produce lift. If the boat has a mainsail, and the mainsail has a smooth flow of air past it, the mainsail will produce lift also. When you have a jib and main in use at the same time, and you trim them in a manner that they cooperate together, the smooth flow of air by the jib and the main combined produces a much higher level of lift force. And producing that higher level of lift force is what we look for in upwind sail trim. Since we can't see the airflow over our sails, how can we tell if our sails are working together and trimmed to produce maximum lift? To confirm that the sails are working together to produce lift, we have some checkpoints. The first is the luff of the jib. You need a smooth flow of air. We reference the jib telltales for this check. The second is the leach of the main. You need a smooth flow of air coming off the main. We reference the leach telltales for this check. The third is the luff of the main. It should be luffing as little as possible. Upward sail trim has three components. The first is the trim of the jib. Ideally you want the jib trimmed so the telltales, top, bottom, and center, are pulling equally. The second is the setting of the back of the main. The back of the main has a set of telltales that let you see the airflow off the back. Those should be pulling back. And then finally, the luff of the main. Ideally, there'll be very little luffing or a bulge in the main. It should be nice and smooth. So let's define a set of rules for performing these checks. Okay, we're sailing on a beam reach, a little bit above a beam reach, almost a close reach. So we'll start with our jib trim. I have the sheet in hand, and I want to use the sheet. Well, actually I can see the windward telltales are spinning, so I need to trim the sheet. I'll trim the sheet until those telltales just straighten out. So rule 1 is adjust the jib so the luff telltales are flying on both sides. Take a look. The front of the jib. Windward telltales, the red one, look okay. The leeward ones, the green ones, are luffing a bit. Or stalled a bit, I should say. So I need to ease the jib sheet a bit. Okay, at some point you want the telltales on both sides of the luff pulling straight aft. That's pretty much what we have now. If you're responsible for trimming sails sailing upwind, it's generally a good idea to sit somewhere where you can easily see the front of the jib and the back of the main. Okay, now we trim the main. We look up the back of the main. Telltales show a pretty good flow off the back of the main. Rule 2 is adjust the main so the leech telltales are flying. There's a little bit of luff in the front, so we'll trim that main. See if we remove the luff without losing the airflow. Rule 3 is to minimize any luffing in the main. Although Rule 3 is pretty easy to state, it's a little bit difficult to explain. In order to minimize luffing in the main, you need to trim the main until the leech telltales just start to stall, then ease the sheet until the telltales are flying again. That procedure will minimize the luffing in the main. We still have some luffing. We still have airflow off the back. Okay, now the back of the sail is stalled a bit, so I'm going to ease it just a few inches. Okay, the back of the sail is pulling well. We've got a little bit of a luff, but if I trim that out, we'll stall the sail. So we need to leave that in place. Sails are trimmed properly. Please note that on a day with a little breeze, with proper trim, it's common to have some luffing on the front of the main. It's far more important to have good flow off the middle and the back of the sail than it is to remove all the luffing from the front. Finally, if the jib gets trimmed in close to the spreaders, or you decide that you want to sail as close to the wind as you can, you need to switch to close-hauled sail trim. Video 5 of our sail trim series will cover close-hauled sail trim.